So hello everyone, again, day 4 of exploring ways of attending and associated helpful qualities to look at, to investigate with awareness, with mindfulness. And the background to it is this book. I thought I'd bring a couple of books along this morning. So this is the book Peak Mind, Dr. Amishi Jha, and the subtitle is 12 Minutes a Day to Find Your Focus and Be Fully Present When It Matters Most. Yes, recordings on YouTube of these morning sessions. So that's one book, and I thought I'd bring along my own book. Why not? So Uncontrived Mindfulness, it's been out a year now. Which is a very undirected, it's a very receptive, undirected way of working with awareness, working with mindfulness. So as usual, I'll say, I'll talk for a little bit, for a while, and then we'll sit. I'll guide us through. Actually, this morning, two sits, and then there'll be some time to talk about your practice at the end or ask any questions. So the particular topic I wanted to look at, and what are we drawing from Amishi Jha's book, is a type of dukkha, which is conveniently called VUCA in American accent, so VUCA. So VUCA, a type of dukkha. So dukkha, for those of you possibly that don't know, dukkha, suffering or dis-ease on different levels, from the physical suffering to an existential dis-ease. So VUCA is an acronym, I think that's what you call it, VUCA. So V is for volatile, U is for uncertain, C is for complex, and A is for ambiguous. So I think this is a term, if my memory serves me correctly, I think this is a term that's used for certain types of work. This is certain types of jobs that involve a lot of complexity, ambiguity, volatility, and uncertainty. And a lot of Amishi Jha's research has focused on groups that have a lot of these qualities in their working lives. So she's worked a lot with the military, so with soldiers, and she's also worked a lot with what they call in the States first responders, so paramedics, the police, firefighters. So jobs where there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of danger, often of a sense of threat, and living in highly complex, fast-changing conditions, and sometimes alongside periods of boredom, periods of waiting around. My niece actually used to be a firefighter in London, and that was it. There were a lot of periods in the station house just waiting, without anything particularly to do, and then suddenly it would be all go. So those are quite extreme versions, if you like, of where VUCA comes into operation. But there are many other situations and livelihoods just through our lives that bring about those sorts of conditions. Or I think teachers have a lot of this in their lives, and any sort of medical staff, or non-medical staff in a medical sitting. Often you've got people who are anxious, and that can lead to all sorts of other mind states. So you might be a receptionist, but you're still in a situation that can kick off, as they say, in different ways. I used to work, I went from working with toddlers to working in a pupil referral unit with teenagers. So a unit where children had been excluded from school. And that certainly had quite a few of the characteristics of VUCA. There was a lot of volatility and complexity in the backgrounds of the children. I think just having children, actually, whether they're toddlers or teenagers, testing boundaries and finding their own sense of place in the world, own sense of meaning in the world. So VUCA is very widespread on different levels. And it's not only in the external world. We don't just find it through others or through other situations, but through our own internal sense of being, our changing mind states, reactions to uncertainty and complexity. Perhaps there's uncertainty in a relationship, or complexity in family dynamics, but also dealing with the volatility of our own moods and emotions. And often we can have a desire for clarity in the midst of ambiguity. And I think the whole area of trauma, I'm not going to go into it here, but there's often a real sensitivity, an oversensitivity to triggers through the body, through the biological nervous systems. Trigger that sort of volatility. I think VUCA, it definitely has its positive side as well. And I was thinking of artists and the creative process. You have to be able to sort of tolerate a certain amount of not knowing where you're going if you're writing a piece of music, or unless you're Mozart and it's all there in your head to start with, but or art, if you're an artist of some kind. I think there's an ability to be with uncertainty and ambiguity. And probably like a number of you, I was watching the tennis yesterday afternoon, and the ability of the players actually to be in the moment, but to be with an uncertain outcome, but to just be really present to what's happening, to each point that's being played. I heard a little phrase this week in relation to the tennis, which was you don't play the other person, you play the ball. Just play the ball. That's what you do. Just So there's certainly times when those qualities of VUCA are we can respond to them in such a way that a lot of goodness can come out of them, a lot of creativity, or we can meet our goals through, if you like, going through that vortex of those qualities of VUCA. But often we resist, we suffer, and we experience a lot of agitation in the mind and the body because we prefer certainty to ambiguity. We prefer simplicity and calm rather than volatility and complexity. So I think there's a sense that we can feel more in control, and we like to feel in control when VUCA isn't present. But to some extent, I think it's always there. I think one of the, or at least an aspect of VUCA is change, is impermanence, which is in the nature of our world and the nature of the mind. And we can't stop that, and we wouldn't want to stop that. Life would be pretty weird if we did. And because the change is not always in the direction that we want it to go in, that's when resistance comes in and we suffer. So what can we do to help us with this type of dukkha, this type of dis-ease, from resisting what's happening? And I think milder versions of dukkha, I've referred to, and Amishi's research looks at quite strong aspects, but the milder versions are when internally there's unsettledness, or there's a bit of agitation in the body and mind, or restlessness, or even boredom, actually, because boredom has this tinge of aversion. It's like, oh, I don't want this. And so by its nature, there's a wanting something else, something more enjoyable, something more pleasant. So I'm going to go through a few points that I think can help work with the VUCA type of dukkha. If you like, help us surf the waves of uncertainty and complexity and all those things, just to help us navigate that territory more frequently. So the first thing, and then I realized this morning, they're not in any particular order. But the first thing is to recognize what's happening. Actually, just before I get into the 3 points, we have to recognize, oh, there's some agitation in the mind. There's boredom. Boredom's happening. And then there's different things that we can do. So the first thing is to uplift the mind in quite a small way. We can do quite small things that make quite a big difference to the mind. So often when we get caught by dukkha or flattened by a big wave of VUCA, the mind becomes less resourced and less resilient. So it's like the dukkha makes us less able to cope with the effects of that dukkha. We get caught by stress, low mood, and threat mind. Those are the three things that Amishi Shah refers to. That's what happens in the mind. And that increases unhelpful thoughts about the difficulty or about the mind states themselves. So the klesha, the kilesa, that become more, they gather in the mind like clouds of afflictive emotions. So when we realize that that's happening, we can direct the mind. So we use directed attention towards a simple resource. And that might be something like going for a short walk in nature, or sitting in your garden if you have a garden for 20 minutes. It might be, I was thinking something that I don't do very often, but I know resources me when I do, is get my flute out of the cupboard and just have a little play. Or it could be a short resourcing practice. Some that I've found over the years, I've been drawing them from different places and circumstances. But one that I particularly like is by Rick Hansen, who's a long-time meditator, but he's also, I think he's a neuroscientist and a psychologist. He's ridiculously well-trained as regards to the mind. And he uses the metaphor of a garden analogy, I think. He says in practice, we're either in the garden, and that would be where we're with a more receptive, undirected practice, undirected mindfulness. We're in the garden, or we're digging weeds in the garden. So this is when we're working with difficulty investigating and aware of difficulty of some sort. So yeah, VUCA would be right in there. And the third thing is always planting flowers, planting seeds that will grow into flowers. So we're uplifting the mind, bringing in beauty, kindness, pleasure. And Rick Hansen mainly focuses on the third one. His exercises help us plant flowers in the mind and grow resilience through having more positivity in the mind, grow resilience and grow resources. And so he does this so that the mind is better able to be with whatever's happening. Sometimes if we're just in a little bit of a downward spiral, it's much harder to meet what's happening. So he uses the flashlight, this directed attention. And I thought maybe we could just do this little practice before we get into the meditation. We'll just do this practice. Maybe it takes 3 minutes, and we've got 3 little stages. So I'll just describe it, and as I describe it, you can do it. So it's called Grow the Good. And the first stage is simply connecting with something that conveys calm strength to you. It might be an image in the mind. If I think of a tree, a big tree, it gives off a sort of calm strength. So I connect with that feeling or that image. And you just take in the feeling. A living strength of tree. And then the second stage is called Okay Now. So often with whatever's happening with us in this moment, if we are simply with the moment, things are okay now. It's possible to be with what's happening. It may not be pleasant or what you want to be happening, but in this moment, just being okay with things right now, with yourself right now. And then the third stage, final stage, is called Flow of Love. So this involves, in a way, just partly casting your mind to little memories. So the flow of love is what happens whenever there is connection on any level between you and someone else or some other being. So it may be a tiny exchange in a shop as you purchase something. It may be a simple kindness from a neighbor or you to a neighbor. It may be a casual but warm, connected exchange with someone that you live with. Or a friend. And it may be a feeling connected and feeling the flow of love between you and the most important people in your lives. And at a certain point, it doesn't matter whether we're giving or receiving. There's such a mutuality, if you like, in that sense of flow. Sometimes we're receiving, sometimes we're giving, often happening at the same time through connection. Connection allows a sense of love to flow. Metta. Okay, so maybe start to let that practice go, but notice where it's perhaps created some uplift or infused some slightly more sort of resourced or resilient attitude or feeling in the mind. Relax the body. And I'm going to move on and talk about the second and third things that we can do in relation to the VUCA kind of dukkha. So the second one I'm going to say very little about, but really it's the most obvious one for most of us who already know the Metta Bhavana practice and perhaps other Brahma Vihara practices. So self-metta, self-compassion. We're going to do a compassion practice a bit later, so I'm not going to say much more about that, except I'm going to mention, some of you will be very, very familiar with this little story I'm about to tell you now. But one of the favorite ways that I think of talking about being able to face dukkha with kindness, with openness, is a little story about when David Attenborough met the gorillas. So I'm guessing that many of you will have seen this little clip on YouTube. I actually watched it last night. I watched it again to see if in the retelling of it, if I was sort of missing bits out. So it's basically when he goes to Rwanda. I'd forgotten, I knew it was Africa, but it's Rwanda. And they think that they might be able to get a little bit of footage where he's, the gorillas are in the background and he's talking to the camera. In the end, it doesn't quite work out like that. He's crept up, he's sort of mimicked the gorillas so that they accept him. But they start playing with him, they start engaging with him, and at one point pulling off his shoes. So he's sort of grimacing, but he's also got this big grin on his face because his shoes are just being pulled off, I'm guessing without their laces being undone. So not a particularly comfortable experience. But he's in this situation that's potentially very dangerous, very uncertain, very volatile. And yet he's embracing it, actually, and he has got this massive grin on his face. Potentially it could all go very, very wrong very quickly, but he's right there with, it's been a dream of his for a very long time to be able to be in this sort of contact with gorillas. They're playing with his hair and trying to pick non-existent fleas off him, and cuddling him, basically. It's a very lovely clip, I recommend it. But it's a particular sort of attitude towards towards what could be our big and scary mind states. I suppose we've got gorillas, but we've got our mind states are also quite big and scary at times, and it's pointing to a way of being with those sorts of states. So this takes me on actually to another, or the third, way of, it's an attitude really. I think it's an attitude of mind. And it's another quality of mindfulness, of what the Buddha called right mindfulness. And it's a quality called, the English is free from desires and discontent in regard to the world. And in regard to the world apparently means the world of the senses. So it's a particular attitude in the mind, rather than the mind being completely free of all sorts of desires and discontents, which is another way of talking about the kleshas, craving and aversion, and the hindrances. So it's about when we can meet our experience, whatever that experience is, with this quality of free from desires and discontent, the suffering is reduced. So we see if there's something in us, something in our experience that accepts what's happening. So acceptance is the key to this quality. So we're willing to say, this is how it is right now. Can I be with this? How would it be to just be a bit more open to this? And in doing that, we let go of struggle. We let go of resisting what's there. And the mind opens to the opposite of discontent, which is contentment. So there's an ease with what's happening, rather than a resistance. So I think it's quite a practice to be open to being with what's unpleasant or unwanted, whether that's a mind state, or it might be a physical pain or some sort of difficulty, but being open to this is how it is right now. Often I think that we might try and think ourselves out of a difficulty, but often that difficulty at root is an unpleasant feeling. The feeling of resistance is quite unpleasant. And I remember hearing a little phrase, you can't think yourself out of an unpleasant feeling or a difficult feeling. But if you can be with it, if you can accept that this is what is happening right now, it makes things a lot easier. Because it is so natural to try and think yourself out of a difficult situation or a difficult feeling. But actually just being with it, just accepting that it's there, is quite revolutionary, really, quite counterintuitive. And we're not saying with that acceptance that this is the end of the story, or even that this is okay. But in this moment, it's okay. It's okay that it's here right now. It's okay that sadness is here, that anger is here, or boredom is here, or rumination. And those things are so much easier to be with without the struggle, without the resistance. So with acceptance, with that freedom from desire and discontent, even a momentary freedom, we can see that, and this is really significant, we can see that our happiness isn't dependent upon something unpleasant stopping or going away. And our happiness isn't dependent upon something pleasant or enjoyable happening and staying. So there's a temporary sort of liberation from dependence on nice things happening or pleasant things happening. And we can see that actually the mind can be actually quite happy, can be content, can be not identifying with this unpleasant mood or unpleasant happening that's going on. And it can really increase our faith and increase our confidence that actually we can be with difficulty, but not sort of join in, if you like. The mind doesn't have to join in. We can be with painful events without being overwhelmed. And so we learn not to be afraid of our own minds and the things that go on within them. And I think this really helps us manage and able to surf that wave of dukkha, of uncertainty and volatility and those other qualities. And mindfulness is a real friend, I think, to us. This is a quality, remember, acceptance, a quality of right mindfulness. So mindfulness with these really big, difficult, gorilla type mind states, mindfulness is a friend that allows and enables us to be with what's happening. It's not pleasant, and we're not pretending it's pleasant, but we can be with it from a mind that's actually the qualities of awareness are very different to the qualities of whatever gorilla mind state is going on. So there's something in the qualities of awareness in the mind that are resourcing the mind while other stuff is happening. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. Maybe like other mornings, that just have time to see if there's a question or two. If not, we'll go straight into the practice. But just if you want to, if you have a question about this, and I know that this is it's a very big area, then just put up your electronic hand. I like saying that. Put up your yellow electronic hand. Okay then. All right, well, if you make yourself comfortable, we'll do 2 practices, but we'll go straight from one into another. They work quite well together. And the first one will be more directed, and the second one will go into a more undirected, open practice. I may not say, I may not lead right through that, but just start us off. So the first practice is actually from someone called Kristin Neff, who is, she's been very influential in the what's it called? Mindfulness and self-compassion, more secular movement. So using mindfulness, but with self-compassion. So we're going to do a practice called the compassion break. So the compassion break is a very simple practice in 3 short stages, and it'll probably take us about 10 minutes. And before any of the stages, we just allow ourselves to settle and relax. Come to whatever's happening in the present moment. We come to rest in mindfulness moment by moment. And then in the first stage of the practice, let your mind go towards something in your life currently that causes you some uneasiness, some difficulty, some pain. You may not have a choice about this, but be aware perhaps not to choose something that you know is likely to overwhelm the mind at the moment. As I say, you may not have a choice. It may just be something that's very, very uppermost in your mind. So you bring it to mind and you really recognize that this is tough, this is difficult, and it hurts. Perhaps the words are different, it feels bad or stressful, some type of suffering. This is dukkha. And really recognizing and acknowledging this can often give a little bit of space around it. And there's some sort of validation of your experience through naming it, recognizing it. And then in the second stage, we recognize that this suffering, this experience is part of being human. It's not a mistake. It's part of the human condition. And this is the insight This is the recognition of the universality of dukkha, of difficulty, sadness, difficulty, suffering. This is part of living. Everyone's life contains, or will at some point contain, dukkha. And remembering that when we struggle with our difficulty, our suffering, that others too would likely struggle in the same circumstances. So we're not alone. And this dukkha is quite often how it feels. How it feels to be alive. Dukkha, part of life. And so in the third stage, we remind ourselves that actually this dukkha is it's an opportunity to remember self-compassion. To treat ourselves kindness, acceptance. Perhaps thinking about how we would respond to a friend in the same situation. You might think, what words would you offer? Or perhaps not words, but actions or gestures, touch. Or you might say to yourself, what would I most like to hear? What would I most like to say to myself at this moment and for the rest of my life? And now we're going to move on to the second practice. So the difficulty may well still be there, some degree of compassion, mindfulness also there. And just allow the attention to expand, be undirected, and let the mind notice what else is happening through the field of the body-mind. Don't need to go looking for things, but by relaxing the attention, relaxing the awareness, just opening to include other sensations, connecting with the body. Perhaps a few moments where you notice the breath or sounds or sights if the eyes are open. And feel free to, if your eyes have been closed and you'd like to open them, then do that. You might also notice thinking happening. Notice feeling, how the mind feels, feeling in the body. And perhaps noticing any feelings of uplift in the mind, not looking to generate them, but noticing ones that are already present. Perhaps a contentment to simply sit. Or perhaps patience or ease with whatever's happening. A relaxation from it's not enough, something else should be happening. And see if it's possible to Simply allow what's happening just to be there. Going even further, appreciating whatever is there. Whatever's there that helps us to grow awareness. Remembering that we can grow and strengthen mindfulness from any object through any of the senses, including the mind sense. If you find that there's a persistent pain or difficulty in the body or the mind, it can be helpful not to focus too directly on it. But include noticing how you're relating to what's happening. Whether you're okay with it being there, there's some acceptance. Or you might notice some resistance, some aversion. So noticing what that's like. An acceptance that at the moment there's aversion in the mind. That's the relationship to what's happening. Not a problem. If it's helpful and you find that you're getting lost or caught, different thoughts, then you can use an anchor, perhaps the thumbs touching or your sitting bones. Or sounds around you, just choosing one aspect of your experience and having a very, very light attention in that area. Helping keep some continuity of awareness. And continuing to relax and settle back, relaxing into awareness. Noticing where attention goes when it's undirected. And allowing awareness to accompany it. And we'll do this for another 10 minutes or so. So we have some time, 10 minutes or so for anyone. And I suggest maybe we first of all hear from people who haven't spoken before. But anything you'd like to say about what you noticed in your practice, any questions that arose from the practice or from what I was saying before about Vukha Dukkha. So just if you can raise your hand, Shantida.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to share that when you were talking about Vukha and when you went into the small practices we did to begin with, it felt like you put so very helpful words on exactly what I think I have been up to for 53 days now, with my loss of my son, and it was very comforting because I have been experiencing by practice what you now described in words, and that made it so meaningful. So so yes, I'm in the midst of something that's the most difficult thing in my entire life. I'm 62 now. I never been through anything this difficult before, and it was very comforting to have those words to go together with my experience. So I just wanted to thank you for that and share that.
Thank you for sharing it with us. Yeah, Shantida. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, the when we find the way to be able to hold an experience, I think it's such an incredible gift actually to just even in moments to have the time when we're holding something rather than it being completely overwhelming in a what feels like a very destructive way. But yeah, thank you. Anyone else have a comment or a question? Celia, yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for this. I had a question. You mentioned that sometimes Vukha could come out in sort of creative acts, so it's a positive thing. But I wondered if you had any thoughts on sort of dealing with the other way around, so using creativity in moments of Vukha to try and combat it or to build resilience. I mean, you mentioned yourself playing the flute, and maybe that's one example of coming at it with creativity.
Yeah, interesting. I don't see why not, because in a way with creativity you've got a lot of positivity. I suppose you've got it's an opening out towards experience. I guess I think my experience is probably that it does make a difference with certain types of dukkha. Maybe the more sort of agitated restlessness. Sometimes it is helpful to do something. So maybe just I don't know, playing with color or something. I think that can be really, really helpful. I guess that's partly where we've got our art therapies and music therapies and things that do. And in that way there is a calming. Yeah. Kashanandi.
Yes, firstly, I'd like to thank Kushan Dida, not the right name, for sharing so movingly and poignantly. I myself are fresh in a storm. I broke my ankle and tore my calf yesterday, and I got home late from A&E last night. I live with and care for my 102-year-old mum, and I can't walk without hopping. I can't carry anything, so I can't in any way cope with my current situation. And those two invitations to bring compassion, firstly, was so helpful. It allowed me to cry, and then to open up and realize that I needed to open my eyes. My eyes closed led to overwhelm with what I have to put in place. But opening my eyes, I looked out on what's normally a very quiet, dead neighborhood. I look over a graveyard, and it was alive. I've been watching gravity-defying squirrels and seeing them getting on with their life and being very much in the moment. I'm not sure what is going to be ahead now for me, but being in the moment is a very large part. Obviously, I've got a lot of things to sort out, but this is not quite now the right time to problem solve that. Really very helpful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like you've within those practices you really found ways of resourcing the mind. I think particularly is that being present with what was happening externally, but it nourished an internal sense, didn't it, that being with the graveyard and seeing the squirrels. Yeah, great. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stefan.
In the beginning, when you introduced how to deal with this VUCA, was there a structure? I remember you started with recognize, and then went into uplift.
Yeah.
Were there some more points there? I might have missed something of those.
Okay. So I had maybe the structure wasn't completely clear. So the recognition in a way was outside of the structure. It's just something that's just really whatever the circumstances, whatever, just to recognize what's happening. So uplift was one of the things that we can use to be with dukkha VUCA or work with it. But within that point, I mentioned a short practice that had three aspects to it. So Rick Hanson's practice of grow the good. Grow the good. So that's the title. Calm strength, okay now, and flow of love. So that was a practice within. That was a type of uplift practice, VUCA, if you like. And then after that, I talked about using compassion, self-compassion. That was the second point, metta or compassion. And then the third one was this aspect of mindfulness, which is to do with acceptance, to do with the mind that's able to, or the awareness that's able to be free from wanting and not wanting, so we can really accept what's happening. Does that make the structure any clearer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anyone else, anything about your practice, anything that you noticed, or any other questions? Does it? I was curious whether VUCA felt like a helpful way of talking about experience, if you like, of this particular. It's I thought it summed up quite a lot of points. There's through those, when volatile, well, everybody knows how it is to feel volatile or be in a volatile situation or an uncertain situation. Dealing with complexity, Akash and Andy, your situation, there's a lot of complexity in there, isn't there? And and ambiguity, so an unclarity, which our world is very complex. So actually, just living in the world, we're dealing with complexity, ambiguity. Prasadavati. Oh, you're still, that's it.
Yes. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. With regard to VUCA, I heard the interview with Amishi, and been trying to get my head around VUCA more, kind of bringing it more closer to my experience in a kind of constructive way. And I think today there was this turning point where its value became more alive for me, in a positive way.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It was another dimension came to it through the way you talked about it, Vajradevi. So it wasn't so much, this aspect of dukkha, which can feel overwhelming or disempowering, or I could be a victim of. But it's somehow bringing them side by side, dukkha and VUCA, in the context of what you've been doing here. It shone a light on, which helped me much more appreciate a challenge, I suppose, and see a very positive, a value in accepting, this is the way it is. And that really touched me. So it wasn't a heaviness of the VUCA or the struggle, but something else came through it. So I really appreciated that. Thank you.
I'm just, as you were talking, I was wondering, I was thinking, I wonder if it's to do with the sort of implicit right view lens, that looking at, I suppose right view is always willing to sort of see things as they are, right now, and great.
And somehow making one's peace with that. That is how life is. And sort of opening up to that, and not going into the resistance to it, or seeing it as a problem.
Even the worst sort of fears and happenings.
Yes.
As Adida was saying, really the worst thing that can happen, but there can be, it's possible to be in a relationship with it that's not,
So thank you. That's really incredibly valuable.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're almost at the end, unless there's anyone else with anything to add. Okay, good. Well, I'm enjoying these sessions, really enjoying these sessions. So it's lovely to see you all here. And last one tomorrow. And Ian wrote a comment. So let's maybe, So this was to do with, I'm just going to check this out, to do with self-compassion. Okay. So he says, am I alone in finding it difficult to find self-compassion when in the midst of uncertainty and volatility? Gorillas are sometimes too scary to approach. Absolutely, absolutely they are. And I think we have to really respect that. And maybe that's when the respect has a certain sort of acceptance in it as well, accepting that actually this at the moment is too much. This is so really acknowledging that to oneself, and that in itself is a kind of self-compassion, to think, actually, this, you know what, this is as far as I can go with this. This is as much, and I'm really struggling. Acknowledging the struggle, and yeah, if possible, being able to be with that struggle with some degree of maybe kindness is even too active sometimes, but just a willingness to be with it. Yeah, with whatever degree of resistance is there. Yeah. Okay, so tomorrow, looking a bit at thinking, and Amishi says a lot about mind wandering, mind thinking and thinking and thinking. And so we'll look a little bit at that and do a couple of meditations coming into relationship with thoughts and thinking. So I hope to see some of you then. Oh, and thank you to Nick, as always, for hosting, doing a really great job and answering the questions in the chat as well. Yeah, okay. See you then.
Thank you, Vajradevi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.
Thanks for today,
everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, Vajradevi. Great session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, it's all recorded up on YouTube. To catch up. Yeah. Okay.